This podcast is a member of the Red 5 Network. For more Red 5 Network podcasts and content creators, visit bio.link/red5.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
Respect your authority.
Still the best intro ever.
What's up, my friend? And what is up with everyone in the chat? We got some people in there. Thank you for stopping by.
Long live the Empire.
Long live the Empire. And Nicole Damon's in there. Hey, everybody. Thanks for stopping by this Saturday night. It's a wonderful start to Star Wars month.
Oh, yeah.
Here at the Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast. Today was
get some more content tomorrow, too.
Absolutely. It never stops over here.
Whatever that cartoon is called.
Yeah. And we have another show, another ScarifLive tomorrow as well. So that'll be tons of fun.
Yeah.
Today was Free Comic Book Day. I guess there's still a couple of hours left if a comic book store near you is open till midnight. But did you get some comics today?
No, man. We went antiquing.
Oh, very nice.
I got plenty of comic books already.
What'd you find? Anything?
I don't know. We went to Jefferson, Texas. If anybody's ever been there in the chat.
Jefferson,
and it's an old one of those towns that's just stuck in time. And there's all kinds of antique malls there, and there's about 4 or 5 we still didn't make it to. But it was great. A beautiful day, and didn't find any nerd stuff, unfortunately. But
I love antique malls.
Yeah,
I love them. They're a lot of fun. I went to 2 thrift stores today because I was off today, and that's just what we do. But I found a Yoda, an animatronic Yoda, about this big. I brought it home, and I realized I already had one.
So I was telling my wife the same thing. That like, here's the problem. Like, I saw some stuff. I'm like, I think I already have that. It's bad.
It's funny. Bad. It's funny. But my brother saw it on Twitter, and he commented, and I'm gonna.
Is it the little sword fighting one?
No. It's so big, and it's like the original plush one, a little thinner, but it responds to sounds and voices, and it does some goofy stuff. But yeah. And we see people starting to come into the chat. Some more. Ubaldo, hello. Good evening to you.
Lots of fine folks.
Did I say Cam? I did say Cam, didn't I, a while ago? I sure did. Thanks, guys, for coming by. We have a pinned tweet, not a pinned tweet, a pinned comment up there. If you are so inclined, we would love to say thank you for your support. Brad and I love coffee, so coffee goes a long way over here.
You ain't lying.
I ain't lying, but thank you very much. buymeacoffee.com/Scarif. Thank you for your support. And we are going to be talking about Andor, the second week, the second arc, 3 episodes. That should be a lot of fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of excitement for the first person in the chat. We should also give props to the last person, whoever makes it all the way with us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Props to the last person in the chat tonight.
Exactly. So this week's episode titles Ever Been to Gorman? I Have Friends Everywhere, and What a Festive Evening. I know we started. Yeah.
Too much clickbait to talk about tonight, too.
Too much. I know we just started Reign of the Empire, Mask of Fear by Alexander Freed. And I switched over to audiobooks because I have more time when I'm driving.
Right now, but it's okay.
It's okay. But the book is what chapter are you on?
I'm on 7. I'm like right behind you right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll catch up
I
tomorrow. Don't worry. I'll
yeah.
there's a lot for anybody who hasn't picked that up. A lot of great insight into the characters, and we're only what you're on chapter 8, chapter 9, somewhere around there.
13.
Oh man, you
Yeah.
oh, you're pulling away right now. I'll catch up. A lot of great insight into the characters of Bail Organa. Of course, we'll talk about him. Can't believe somebody else is playing him. Bail Organa, Mon Mothma, Saul Guerrera.
Yeah.
Lots of good insight into all these characters. Highly recommend. Alexander Freed has done some good work for Star Wars in the past, and this is off to a good start too.
Yeah, I when I was reading it, I did find the chapters pretty dense. They pack in a lot of information, a lot of situational scenes. But one of the chapters, and I don't know, Nicole, if you're in the chat here, I don't know where you're at, but chapter 8, I had to pause that a couple of times because of what the character said. And I won't spoil it for you because you're almost there, but that chapter 8 so far is my favorite. And it is so well written, very much like Andor. And I think it's a really great companion. And didn't you tell me last week that this is supposed to be a trilogy of books?
It will be. Yep.
Yeah.
And it's
Reign
gonna
of
be
the
like
Empire.
there's one next year and the one the year after.
Wow.
So
very nice. Very nice. So I'm enjoying that. Like I said, I've got a lot more time driving when I drive, so I switched over to an audiobook. And if anybody wants to do that right now, Audible is having a sale, 99 cents for 3 months. And you can pick up that book with your free credit and listen to it as you drive to and fro.
Yeah.
So
unfortunately, my drive to work nowadays is between 10 and 15 minutes, so I can't.
That's nice.
I used to, well, yeah, it's nice, but not for audiobooks. I used to have a 30, 40-minute drive to the Navy base and plenty of time for audiobooks there.
Sure.
But not so much now.
Yeah. Chicago traffic takes me on a good day 50 minutes to and from.
I only wish Mark Thompson was doing the narration for the book. But that's okay.
That's okay. Every so often they'll slide in some music, a little sound effects, kind of gives you a nice immersive feeling for that.
Yeah.
So that's not so bad. All right. So, ever been to Gorman?
Ever been to Gorman? It's nice this time of year.
Yeah. So let me ask you first, what did you think of this second week's arc compared to the first week?
Much better. I mean, we as you said, that first arc was definitely setting everything up, laying the foundation for the characters' motivations, that sort of thing. I did think the first arc was unnecessarily slow at times, and I thought there was a lot of fluff and filler material in the first arc. Didn't really get that with this one. This one was pretty lean cut, I think, for these three, and I think that's going to get more and more with the last two arcs that we have. But really good stuff. Much higher rating this week than the first week.
Yeah, I tend to agree. But although I do enjoy a good setup, I think the story on the first arc was somewhat necessary. But we talked about it last week. It did seem like some of the scenes, some of the scenarios, kind of stayed too long, and they could have been tightened up a little bit more. But Nicole says she prefers the second arc over the first arc. I tend to agree. But probably for different reasons, but it doesn't matter. I agree. One of the things.
Who'd you say is the MVP of the second arc? I'm gonna go ahead and beat you to the answer. It's Saul Guerrera.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say.
Sure.
I'm like, is he talking about Saul Guerrera? Because that's the right answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's every time they bring in Saw, it's obviously he's a favorite character of ours for various reasons, but I feel like the series at this particular point, they're drawing a lot of inferences, a lot of new material and characteristics on Saw Gerrera as a character. We're learning a lot more, and he's, I don't know, man, he's really deep.
I think Forrest Whitaker's really embracing that character. I think he's digging it more and more.
And I read an interview where he was basically saying, I don't know what to think of this character. And every time they give me something new, my eyes open up even more so. So That's
That's
also
what
an
Forrest
interesting
said.
take. Yeah.
I mean, he does some wild shit.
Yeah.
He
Yeah,
does some wild
absolutely.
shit.
You know, I
Yeah.
think the voice thing that he does, I think that was his contribution to the character. But I think coupled with the writing and some of the things that we already know about him as a character, I think it's a great combination. And I think this is where a writer, an author of a piece of entertainment, and the actor kind of works well together to bring a character like that to life. And I think it's fantastic. It's marvelous.
Yeah, yeah. And is that the other character that we've been introduced to in the Reign of the Empire? Is that, do you think, where he's going to get his suit from? Some of his
Oh,
upgrades to his suit?
yeah, yeah, maybe.
I think so.
Right.
Another
'Cause
plug
he's
for that book. Check it out.
yeah, absolutely. What's his name? He's kind of like he's got implants.
Suzanne,
Yeah.
Suzanne,
Yeah.
Samsonite. I don't know.
Yeah. It's French, no matter what. Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So this first episode, you know, we get a little reminder of what Bix was going through. And you know, she's having trouble overnight. She's having trouble sleeping in the safe
Yeah.
house there. But it's kind of tragic. I think, you know, my first inclination when I saw how much Bix was kind of going through what she was suffering, it kind of was like a little bit of a turnoff. I think
Really?
the way that they're presenting her character, obviously she's gone through hell and back.
Yeah.
Between the
A
the
few times.
torture, between the
Yeah.
torture and the imperial officer, you know, trying to assault her, et cetera, et cetera. You know, they're bringing back, they're introducing, you know, I guess, you know, a dependency in her character. She's got those drops that she uses, and
Just melatonin. Just some
yeah,
high-powered melatonin. That's all.
yeah.
You're fine.
But I thought, I don't know, I didn't like it. I didn't like it, and
Really?
I think because we all talk about, you know, in Star Wars, we all talk about, you know, strong female characters and et cetera, et cetera. This kind of like, to me, it kind of like took a couple of notches back as far as female characters per se. And I know we have you know, examples of other characters that maybe have fared a little better. But Bix really is
Do you not think that's a realistic arc for her
yeah,
considering what she's been
yeah.
through?
I think so. I think
And
so.
what do you think
But
about the topic of dependency? You know, last week we discussed, hey, does sexual assault have any place in Star Wars? And
Mhm.
this is dependency, which people talk about spice and that sort of thing in Star Wars, but drug dependency is not one thing we've really covered. Where do you think, does it have a place in the Star Wars universe?
You know, the question of does this belong in the Star Wars universe is an interesting one for me, because I think um, if we only had 3 movies, then everything could be kind of categorized in a small packet. But you know, in 2 years, Star Wars is going to be 50 years old, and I
Yeah.
think for a franchise like that to grow, you have to also expand the packet of what is included in these stories. And I think a lot of people are resistant to that. I think I've seen a lot of people on Twitter, you know, complain that, you know, this isn't Star Wars, this isn't my Star Wars. And I think that's kind of the wrong attitude to take. I think we have to kind of step back and say, you know, this, you know, how long can we stand another 50 years with, you know, people just lightsaber battling and, you know, good versus evil in such a way that is so I don't know, constrictive to telling a more, I don't know, a more meaningful story. And I know George Lucas embedded everything that we're seeing in Andor in Star Wars. It's just that now it's getting fleshed out. We are taking a lot more into it because we are adults versus, you know, 7, 8, 12-year-olds, whatever. But it's always been there. Now it's a little bit more fleshed out, like I said. And I think as fans, we really have to kind of examine or reevaluate what it is that we want from this franchise, especially if it's going to survive another 50 years. I don't know what your
Yeah.
thoughts are that
Well,
in general.
I tell you what, I'm a couple points there. I never want to watch episode 4. I'll be honest with you. 4 was never on the top of my list of favorites. But with all the material that we had lately, I can't wait to go back and watch episode 4 right now. I think it's going to be seen in a whole new light. Not really a whole new light, but just it's going to mean more. What they're going through and the might of the empire and the fight against the empire. All this content is making me want to go back and watch episode 4, which is really saying something for me. But I like what you're saying, and I agree with it. And I think covering things like dependency, I'm okay with that because we're talking about a general theme, something that any and all of us could face at any time in our life. Could face dependency of some sort.
Sure.
Whether it's drugs or alcohol or whatever your vice might be, and somebody like her, I can see how she would succumb to that. And I like what Luthen was saying, or it was scary what Luthen was saying to her, like, hey, watch that because when you come off of it, you're going to have even more nightmares. So, like, what do? Do you stay hooked on it, or do you risk the nightmares getting off of it? So she's kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place right now.
Yeah, and I have a feeling that her character won't make it through the rest of this season, and that will give Cassian another layer to his character when we see him in Rogue One. I think he's experienced a lot of loss, and it's going to affect him.
Yeah, while I was watching this arc, my thought was, do you think that Jyn Erso is going to remind him of Bix? Is that why he connects with Jyn so much?
Yes, I think so. And again, Diego Luna has said after this season, you guys are going to watch Rogue One in a different light. And I think I can't wait to do that. Jaspata just reminded us Sujin was the name of the guy in Reign of the Empire. So yes, thank you very much. I've got a couple of comments in the chat that I wanted to put up on screen, and let's see if we can get your take. First of all, Cam, thank you, Cam, for showing up and saying hello. He says, I just want to be able to watch all Star Wars with my 8-year-old daughter, period. What do you think of that comment?
I think I would sort of agree and disagree. I think you can't watch all of Star Wars with your daughter right now, but I think you and your daughter can grow with Star Wars. We kind of talked about this before. I don't think all of the content is appropriate for an 8-year-old right now, and that's fine. I would say 90% of it probably is. Mm-hmm. But it's just enough material where you with us that have children, we've all done it. We start off with the Clone Wars or whatever time period you started in, and you kind of and now we're watching the more adult stuff together. So, and then you can now with your daughter understanding Star Wars, having that baseline knowledge, down the road, you can watch the more mature content and be able to discuss those more serious topics.
Yeah. I agree with that assessment. I think, Star Wars obviously runs a gamut of different types of stories. I mean, you've got I said it earlier on Twitter, you've got the young Jedi adventures that I'm not going to watch. And
that's pretty good though. Yeah. This is why I keep having kids, even as many years later. This is why I keep having kids.
Sure.
Having an excuse to watch it.
But my point is, we're not going to watch everything. I mean, there are people that didn't watch Resistance because it was too goofy. But again, I had an age appropriate child at the time of Resistance, so I watched it with him. And I found it
like Hayden Christensen was saying, like he hadn't shown his daughter all of Star Wars because he didn't want her to see Daddy killing younglings.
Right,
in episode 3. So it's not just the new content that's may not be appropriate. There's some older stuff that's not completely age appropriate.
I mean, Aunt
We as
Beru
parents have to make that assessment,
yeah, Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen were burned to death in
We're still
episode
scarred
4.
from that how many years later?
Yeah, exactly. And they showed it. It's like
70s,
charred
70s
bodies.
was wild. 70s was wild.
All right. So Nicole kind of also commented and said that
Is that the good and evil comment you can put up there?
Yeah. We've gotten away from good versus
and evil is not as complex though, right?
But I'm totally gonna counter her though. We've always had good and evil in every Star Wars. We're seeing evil now. We're seeing good try to overcome the evil of what we're seeing in Andor. So I don't think that we've gotten away from good versus evil. There is no Star Wars without good versus evil in some respect.
Even episode 3, right? Even George made it more complex with the opening crawl, where he said, we're starting with war, and he's like, there's heroes on both sides, right? And so it's not just as simple as this good and this team's evil, right? It's it's very complicated, and there's lots of layers to it.
Sure.
And one thing, again, we're going to plug the book, and this is something I want to talk more on the podcast about. We've talked about propaganda and stuff like that.
Yeah.
One thing the Alexander Freed book shows very well. We talked about, how come people didn't realize that the Empire was evil? Well, read the book. Yeah. Emperor Palpatine's approval rating was extremely high.
Right.
So we are watching this externally, knowing that the Empire is evil. At least those in charge of it, it's evil. But now put yourself in universe, and the Emperor's approval rating is above 90%. Of course, they probably control most of the polls and the media, but the normal person throughout the galaxy thanks him for squashing a rebellion and putting down
stopping the war. Yeah,
right?
Stopping the war, bringing order.
Simple as good versus evil. There's a lot to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's another comment too from Jaspot. Shades of gray in the Resistance is being shown, just different ways people want to change. Mon with politics, Saw with just blunt force, and Bale in his faith in the Jedi. And I think this is where the problem lies with a lot of fans. I think they don't want to see shades of gray in Star Wars. They want to be able to see, the good guys and the bad guys and the evil and the good. And I can appreciate that, but I think as we get older, we realize that there are shades of gray in life, and seeing a little bit of that in the franchise that we love is just, I don't know, it's just more realistic.
You can't, we talked about this a long time ago. The rebellion could never have won a straight war with the Empire. You take it back to the parallels with the American Revolution, right? The British had the strongest army, the strongest navy in the world. How do you fight that, right? It was a difference in tactics, and you had combine we've talked home field advantage, and then the hit and run tactics, the stuff that Patriots mostly fiction, but there's some truth in it in that movie. It was seen as very unorthodox and just wrong, the tactics that the American rebels were using. This was not a dignified war that they were fighting. Well, we would never have won a straight dignified war. They had the numbers, they had the training. We wouldn't have won that. So this is illustrating that perfectly well, I think.
Sure, yeah. And thanks to the Ewoks too for that.
And thank you to the Ewoks.
Thank you to the Ewoks. But just about to with that last comment, he really hit the nail on the head there regarding the book. And again, getting back to the book, I think it really deals with, and I showed it last week, the poster of Mon Mothma, Saw Gerrera, and Bale. I think it really concentrates on those characters and how they are dealing with the formation of this new empire, and how they kind of know a little bit of the truth behind the scenes, which I think we're seeing a lot of here, especially We'll talk about it later because there's some stuff that the ISB is starting to notice when it comes to the bureaucracy among imperial forces. You've got the Imperial Navy, you've got the ISB, you've got obviously Palpatine. So there's a little bit of controversy between those forces, which I think is interesting, and they just touched on it. I wonder if they're going to flesh it out even more so, because I think it's really, really interesting. Let's get into Gorman.
Yeah, let's talk Gorman.
Space pigeons.
Hey, and they gone. Good comment about Perrin. I mean, I wouldn't say hero, but again, Perrin's another character. You'll get some more background in the book. And this, backs up what you said last week about the role that Perrin plays in all this, and he might be the unsung hero by the time we get done with this series.
Yeah, and he's a lot different. I see him a lot different in the second season that I did in the first season. I think in the first season, obviously he was set up the way he was set up. I'm starting to see a little bit more compassion by Perrin with his family, especially with Mon Mothma. I mean, I've always maintained that Perrin knows what he's doing, and Perrin and Mon Mothma are kind of teamed up. They had set Perrin up kind of to be the fall guy. If anything happens, he's doing it to protect her. But there are scenes in the second arc, really, where they kind of get together, and you can really tell that that they've developed some sort of additional connection, if you will.
Yeah.
But the relationship seems a lot different in this season than it does in the past.
Yeah. I mean, they got married at 15.
Mm-hmm.
That's arranged marriage at 15. And, there's a lot of history there. And as we said last week, Mon might not be the easiest person to be married to.
Sure.
You know?
Especially with, being a senator and, starting a rebellion, basically.
Yeah.
But go ahead. Let's open up the floor to Gorman. I really love this arc here.
It's seeing it from all sides, seeing how the rebels are interested in Gorman and the Imperials, and now I think I've talked about Cyril many times. I think such a stupid character, but I think he will have a bigger and bigger part to play in this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you said when we were watching this the other night, you had texted me something interesting, which I didn't really
I told
connect.
you the word of the week, sheep dipping. I told you we were going to talk about sheep dipping, and I made a connection to Lee Harvey Oswald in the JFK assassination, which of course is how you and I first started talking, our shared interest in those events, and then quickly went over to Star Wars. But so if you see Cyril, if anybody's not familiar, probably most people are not familiar with the term sheep dipping. It's building a history for somebody to be used. So unknowingly to that person, you're building a history for that person that will later be used against them. So in the Oswald parallel, he was in the Marines. He got somewhere along the lines, got involved with the CIA. Some say he was a double agent, even triple agent. They had him overseas. They had him go to Russia, and then they had him come back weeks before the JFK assassination. They had him go down to Mexico City to visit with some communists back there, and then he came back. So he was doing all this under orders from the government, thinking he was doing the right thing. And then, of course, JFK gets killed, and Oswald gets blamed for everything. I think I see a lot of those same parallels with Cyril. He is just dying to be a major, can I say this is the best day of my life? Will that ruin this?
Yeah.
He's just dying, and we see the conversation with Dedra and whatever the hell you call him, Luther Vandross, or whatever the hell you call it, whatever his name. Yeah, the other ISB guy. they're using Cyril like 100%. He's just being used, and he thinks he's being a hero. But yeah, I think he's gonna have a much bigger part to play. And I think you may have said it last week. If he ends up on the Death Star, I think it would just be hilarious.
I think so. He's going to get an assignment. Yeah.
He's like, oh my God, this is the best day of my life.
Yeah.
The day before episode 4. It'll be amazing.
10 minutes later. But it's funny though, because I don't know what it is. A lot of people obviously complain about Cyril, and they question what is the purpose of his character? Why is he still around? But I don't know. You and I, with this knowledge of JFK and behind the scenes and stuff like that, it's pretty apparent, especially after this arc, that it's pretty apparent what they're doing. And it's gonna be a shocking development when they start to really blame him for all of this.
I mean, he works his way into the little resistance front,
right?
As unorganized as they are there. He works his way in that, and
but I think that is one of the more genius subtleties of Gilroy's writing, to setting up all of these characters to somehow be affected by the story in the long run. I think I don't know. And again, just like the book, the script in this second arc here is pretty dense. You do really kind of have to watch it and maybe put the captions up and read it a couple of different times, because there's a lot happening here.
Yeah.
There's a lot happening here on the surface level, but there's a lot happening here, kind of behind the scenes, the motivations of the characters. There are things that are being set up that that I don't know, to someone that is not used to I guess the type of writing that we have here, because it's very political, it's very backhanded. It's writing that we're not used to in Star Wars. And I know somebody, one of our followers called this series a pretentious pseudo intellectual piece of nonsense. But I feel like,
really,
yeah, I feel like people that might have that notion of this series should really let go of social media and take a look at the context of what they're watching, because it's not pretentious, it's not pseudo intellectual, it's written in a smart way. We stopped reviewing The Acolyte because the writing sucked, and we wanted better writing in Star Wars. And here we are. We have better writing, probably the best writing we've ever had in a Star Wars show. And I don't understand, in the long run, fans want better writing. Well, here it is. Fans don't want Andor because it's too pretentious. Well, make up your mind.
Yeah, interesting. I can't tell. Cam, do you agree with that? Well, I don't often disagree with Cam, but I mean, I think that's yet to be seen. It's not as quite, Cam says, it's not as quite as deep and meaningful as the writers and directors think.
I don't see how that's possible. I think it's deeper and more meaningful than what the writers think.
Yeah, and I would say be patient and wait for the entire series to make that assessment. And I think this is really good backstory for Rogue One and for the original trilogy.
Yeah.
And this is, it's adding layers to the original trilogy. I don't know. I said it last week. I think George would completely approve of this series. I think that's the depth that he would have liked to have seen on screen.
I mean, George is a hippie. Tony Gilroy is a hippie. I mean, they were raised in the 60s, and revolution is in their blood. So they're writing, stories of what they know. encased in Star Wars. And I think it's exactly what George Lucas intended if he were writing something like this, today.
I would like to know, because it looks like some folks might agree with the quote that you gave. I'd like to know why you feel it's pretentious. So for those in the chat, please provide some amplifying opinions on that. Why do you think it's pretentious?
Sure.
I think I'm obviously, you guys already know I'm with Ro on this one. I think it's just good storytelling.
Absolutely.
I mean, I had criticisms last week from the first arc. I've said those. I said those last week. I said them tonight. But those words, I don't see it as that. So I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts on why you feel that way.
What do you think of Bix and Cassian's relationship 1 year later, post last week's arc? They go into the little store and they're shopping. First of all, I'm loving the visuals of this series. It is
good to see Coruscant again.
Great to see Coruscant. I mean, every location is beautiful, is wonderful.
Yeah. People were giving the street, the grocery store some crap online. I think I saw.
No, that was a misunderstanding.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I like the relationship. And I tell you, I think one of the most beautiful scenes, it may have been from the second episode this week. But when, it had to have been the second episode, when Cassian was leaving for Gorman on his undercover trip, like the night before he left, and they were just there, embracing and, touching hands and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I thought that was a beautiful scene, and I could really feel the connection there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Cassian has let his guard down in a way that we haven't seen before, and I think
it's going to screw him.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
that's exactly what I was going to say. It's definitely going to make things complicated when we get into Rogue One. I think he's going to close up. There's this peak and valley with his character. When he was a child, obviously when we saw it, he was open to everything. He was curious, joining, the fight to look for his sister, finding out that, his mom just basically said, just give it up. She's dead. So there is an emotional roller coaster with Cassian's character that I think is, once the series is done, and really going into Rogue One, when we see that, it's going to be interesting to see his character after we see the series.
Yeah. And just going back to the other comments, I hate to plug the book one more time. Put all this content together. Read books like Tarkin and Catalyst, and the one that just came out, Reign of the Empire. Put all those books together and content together with shows like Andor, and you get a much bigger appreciation for the rebellion and just the heart and the grit that it took to pull it off, what they did in the original trilogy.
Yeah, absolutely. Nicole's comment here: I'm surprised Bix is not more on edge when at the store and when he holds her. I think Bix is, we talked about Bix being dependent, and I think she is dependent on Cassian as well. We see that when Cassian is on his mission, she resorts to, the drops, and she is not very well put together when Cassian's not around. So I think there's an interdependency there that is kind of interesting. I think somebody on Twitter was commenting on the fact that, the Jedi lived without attachment, and we've got Luthen kind of using that attachment in the people that he uses for his purposes, to kind of take advantage of them. We talk about Cinta and Val and Bix and Cassian. I think he's kind of, negotiating their dependency on each other, and, which is, very, I was going to say anti-Jedi, but, the Jedi don't believe in attachments, and all these characters here are having an attachment. And it's just interesting to me that the juxtaposition of that.
Yeah. Speaking of Luthen, though, that's another character where I would love more backstory. Not every character, we've talked about this, not every character needs backstory, but for his level of bitterness and angst, I would love to see more backstory on him, especially after this show ends. And do you think that he is on his? Do you think his morality is on the same line as same level as Saul Guerrero's? How far off do you think those two characters are? Really?
That's funny. Now seeing this second arc, they're a little different, but I think they are different sides of the same coin. Where Mon Mothma and what she wants to accomplish, the way she wants to accomplish, is a totally different coin. But these guys, Luthen and Saw, there's obviously a reason that they know each other. There's a reason that they have a relationship. They use each other for their various purposes. But I think they are very close to one another when it comes to aligning with their philosophy on how to get things done.
Yeah, because Luthen will not hesitate to use somebody. To your point.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. I don't know if you remember, there was a comic book. It was kind of like a one-shot comedy comic book that was Star Wars related about these two Imperial officers. I can't remember what the name of it was. If somebody in the chat can remind me.
Tags and Bink.
Yeah. I almost felt like the two Imperial officers that were in charge of the office that Cyril was going back to get, where I think it was them for some reason.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, Imperial fitness standards are not the same throughout the galaxy.
Yeah. I always get excited when we have a scene inside the Imperial Security Bureau conference room. I think those are amazingly written scenes. The dialogue is so succinct. I like that word. And Dedra is a credit to her uniform.
Yeah, for sure.
And who's Partagas?
Partagas. Terry Pendergrass.
Teddy Pendergrass.
Not Luther Vandross, wrong guy.
Yeah. Yeah. But, really, really great stuff in there.
He's still, I really love his acting.
Yeah. We do get a little bit of what they start to show in the book that we've been talking about with Mon Mothma trying to generate interest in some of the plans that she's kind of trying to come forth with I guess in the book it's a bill that she introduces to kind of position some sort of legislation to uncover some truths about Palpatine. You were starting to get a little bit of that here. In the book they talk about the Council of 2000, and this might be kind of like the very beginnings of that sort of groupings, at least when it comes to these scenes, which I think are great.
Yeah.
It's and it's funny. I can understand when people say I don't get why this is Star Wars. There's no lasers and lightsabers and everybody is talking too much. But
is that what it is? Because I was thinking like I'm waiting. You're watching Star Wars and you're waiting for action because that's what we're accustomed to.
Yeah.
Is that the issue that people are having? Because this is just, we will get action. There will definitely, and there has been some, but is that the problem? Are people just not getting enough lasers and explosions? I don't want to minimize people's opinions,
Sure.
Those in the chat, but I was thinking about that as I was watching the show, is that, we're just not getting what we're used to seeing. And that's why people are having a hard time with it.
I think that's a part of it. I think people want to see, their lightsaber battles and, spaceships exploding and things like that, which, there's nothing wrong with that. But I think at the same time, just going back to what I said, I think, this franchise has to kind of expand and grow. And one thing that I really love about Tony Gilroy's comments regarding how he approached telling this story in this way is that he said, I wanted to take the source material seriously. And I think that a lot of directors and writers come into the sandbox not with that idea in mind. They want to put their mark on the Star Wars story in some way. They want to, take it in a direction that maybe is a little off the beaten path. But I think if you take the source material about just the politics, the maneuvering of these characters back and forth, especially in the context of having just created an empire and what the people that don't really like that empire go through. um I think it's fine. I think it's something that I think it represents an evolution in storytelling when it comes to Star Wars, and I'm all here for it.
Yeah, if you look at Rogue One and the 2 seasons of Andor, I think what you're saying is exactly correct. You can tell he wrote, the writing and these stories are specifically geared towards the original trilogy. All they do is add that depth to the original trilogy,
Yeah.
and I think that's good. That's a great thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're still kind of scrolling through here. What did you think of we every time we get a little more Saw Gerrera, I'm excited. Obviously, he's a favorite character. We followed him through the Rebels, Clone Wars animation, and we kind of understand his motivation for being who he is, but we get a little extra insight as far as his character and why he's doing it. There's one of the favorite lines that he says in this week's arc is he asks what's his name, the other character, Nam, what's his name, the one that came to drop off the weapons and show him how to use it.
Yeah.
But he says, do you think I'm crazy? Of course I am. War is not for the sane. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, the characterization there is perfect. And there's some insight into him in the book, and it makes you wonder. Obviously his story arc starts in Clone Wars, and I love the lines with him where he talks about Andor, and then he refers to something as his sister. I was like, oh my god!
Oh,
like,
yeah,
he's taking it back to his sister, right? And I'm like I said, spoilers. Hopefully everybody's watched Clone Wars by now and knows
yeah.
why those are very important lines.
Sure.
But one thing that the book kind of makes mention of, and this is something that can be discussed, is his motivations. Is he taking on the Empire just because it's the biggest thing out there? Just because it's the biggest opponent out there? Maybe he's not as he's not doing it for the right reasons. He's doing it because if you're in boxing, you don't want to take on some amateur. You want to take on the best, whatever sport you're in. You want to take on the best.
Sure.
Is his motivations as simple as that? That's why he's taking on the Empire, because it's the biggest thing out there.
Well, even before that, he was taking on the Republic because
Right.
it was, and he doesn't care. For him,
Well,
he said it.
Well, that's the thing, though. He went from taking on the Separatist, he aligned with the Republic.
Yeah.
And then the Republic, and this is what somebody called him out on in the book. Then, because he aligned with the Republic in the Clone Wars, it turned into the Empire, and now he's fighting that.
Yeah.
So is he fighting just because it's the biggest thing out there? And he's just angry about everything that happened back on his own planet?
Well, I think that is definitely why he's doing it. I think that anger has rooted itself in his soul, and that is exactly why he's doing it. He's trying to exact revenge on the death of his sister. He doesn't care who he exacts revenge on, as long as that feeling, that void is filled. And I think that's what makes him a very, very intriguing character.
Do you think he's forgotten? Do you think at this point he's forgotten why he's fighting?
That could very well be because he talks about the gas that he's sniffing and how much that gives him some sort of leeway into his actions. And didn't he call the gas Stila?
Did he really? He may have.
He interposed the identity of his sister, which he lost to this gas, which, you know, he's cuckoo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just gets worse.
Yeah. All right, so let's kind of move on. What else? How else do you want to handle this? This second episode is I have friends everywhere, and obviously that Cassian goes on this mission to pose as a textile fabrics type dealer, and he goes and starts to talk with and infiltrate the Gorman resistance. And I forgot, what are they called specifically?
I'll have to look it up. That's
the Gorman something.
The Gorman Front.
Yes, the Gorman Front. You know, the again, just getting back to the visuals, I just want to kind of not forget to mention. I know we mentioned it a while ago at the top of the show, but this show looks amazing. It looks incredible. They did shoot a little bit in the volume, but I think that one of the scenes when Cassian and Bix are in the apartment, they've got windows outside. They use the volume for the windows on the outside, and that's, you know, perfect mix of real and virtual there. But I don't know, man, this show is amazing to look at. And again, it's another reason why you should watch it a couple of different times, because there's so much in the frame. You know, Sean from Extra Star Wars and I always play around with each other. It's cinematic, and there's just so much to look at.
Yeah, and I think the reason why you and I connect with this, there's so many parallels from the 40s, 50s, 60s, and the spy games that are being played, like the Gorman Front really seems, kind of like French Resistance, for whatever it's worth or not. And the spy games that Luthen and Andor are playing. And I think Andor's assessment, Luthen didn't like it. Well, that was another good philosophical discussion. Andor's like, hey, there's nothing there, man. These guys, they're dumb. They're worthless, and Luthen's like, who cares? They're going to light a fire. It's going to glow really brightly when the whole thing blows up. Like, Luthen doesn't care. He doesn't care, who gets killed in the process. Like that's why I asked about Saul. Like, sometimes I think could be even worse than Saul in some cases. Yeah, he's willing to let the entire Gorman population suffer as long as it makes some dent in the Empire.
Yeah. How cool was it to hear the name Tarkin in this second episode?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and the fact that what do they call it? The Tarkin massacre, the Tarkin
massacre. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's interesting too, because I guess the Tarkin massacre happened. They put up the monument, and then they're also putting up some sort of imperial building, in the shadow of the monument, which kind of undermines, the sacrifice or the loss that the Gorman people, suffered. The Empire is kind of being entrenched into the society, which is obviously a reminder of the tragedy that they suffered. But I guess it's just one way to subjugate a people into submission, and that's the Empire.
I mean, yeah, it's I think it's an armory that they're putting right there in the middle of the city.
Yeah,
Empire does not care, and they're going to lock it. And all this, we talked about Mon's methods, in the rebellion and the Empire, whether they like it or not. A lot of times they use the same methods, and these are the same methods we see in the real world. You have your official way of doing business in government of trying to pass laws, but at the same time, you're doing other things to make that happen, which is a lot of times inciting rebellions, in other places. We have a certain interest in a certain part of the world. Well, we have no reason to go there, but now you poke the bear, and now we got reason to go in there, right? And that's what the Empire is doing.
Yeah.
And the Mon and Bale and the rest of them, they're doing the same thing from their angle. They want to use official channels to fight the Empire, but they're like, we got to do some stuff on the side too to actually make that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. The second episode reminded me a lot of like a 60s cloak and dagger spy thriller. Sure. You've got the spy that puts secret plans in a garbage can and then marks the garbage can with a chalk, and then walks away. Very reminiscent of that type of story that we know very well, obviously from some of the stories that we know. But yeah, I really enjoyed. I think the second episode of this second arc is probably my favorite. There's a lot there to kind of digest and try to absorb.
So, what do you think about the Vel and Cinta relationship? I had to really think back as to how that ended in the first season, and how that ties back to the present time. What do you think about that?
I think Luthen is using them to his advantage. Obviously, Cinta kind of just left, and she told Vel in the first episode, in the first season, relationship second, mission first. And Vel was not, she's a rich girl from a wealthy background, and she was. I feel like she was radicalized because she fell in love with one of the radicals. And I think that relationship dynamic is interesting, especially in the first season. We get its conclusion, unfortunately, in the second season, but I think it's tragic. Obviously, the word war is in the franchise that we all love, Star Wars, and things like this happen. But again, I think it's all as a contributing factor to Luthen's actions, where obviously, Luthen has ulterior motives when it comes to using his operatives, and Cinta was obviously very loyal to the cause. It was nice to kind of see them together, kind of running a mission, at the same time this time. But again, I think Vel had to remind herself that it was mission first and relationship second.
Yeah. And we talk about Black Ops and Cloak and Dagger. Like a lot of these scenes that you're talking about, like cafe scenes and stuff like that, really reminiscent of 1940s, 1950s, post World War II, where the Cold War was at its. And that's kind of where we are right now in the Star Wars universe. Is the height of this Cold War, right before the war gets kicked off. You can really feel it in like those cafe scenes and stuff like that.
Yeah. One of our followers, Ann Sheraton, said that it would be cool to see the introduction of certain characters that we have known from the original trilogy, like General Madine. That would have been that would kind of be cool to see,
for sure,
his character.
Yep.
And maybe General Radis or Captain Akbar, because he hasn't reached admiralty yet.
Nope. Still no Jin though. So this is now what? This is 3 years. 3 years before episode, Rogue One and episode 4.
Right.
So Jin should be, if they're following the old timeline, Jin should be part of the mix right now, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, in the book Rebel Rising, they worked together for a while, but then Saw abandoned her, and she was.
Yeah, but I thought that was around this time.
No, she was 16 years old.
And she was how old in that? She was what, 20 in the movie?
Yeah. So there's a couple of
right
years
after this.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair.
So it kind of it kind of squares up time wise. But yeah, Rebel Rising is another book that is highly recommended. I think written by, if I'm not mistaken, Beth Revis, and it gives you a good backstory between the relationship and the activities that Saw Gerrera and his posse were doing with the help of Jyn Erso, forging documents, forging Imperial.
Yeah, It's funny because everything she's charged with in Rogue One, they go through and explain each one of
Mhm.
those charges, which is pretty funny. It's a
Yeah.
quick read, but it's a young adult story, but there's some pretty
There's some
heavy
good
stuff that
stuff.
happens in that too.
Yeah. There's some good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you were asking me regarding, finding out that Luthen has listening devices in everywhere, I guess, because obviously Clea is the one that kind of monitors all the radio transmissions,
Yeah.
and obviously that is, that is a setup, obviously, to the fact that they've got ears everywhere. They've got, listening devices everywhere to be able to kind of hear and, make sure that they have information privy to the cause. But there is a problem with one of the art pieces that was part of the collection of what's his name, Davros, or am I mixing Doctor Who, Davros?
Skulk,
Yeah,
Skulkin, whatever the hell his name is.
but you know who I mean. The chat knows
Uh-huh.
who I mean. So obviously there was
Skolden.
yes,
Davos Skolden, who does sound like a Doctor Who character.
Yeah. So there was a problem with one of the art pieces that was not supplied by Luthen, but the character nevertheless wanted to remove all the art pieces and have them examined again, which obviously if they did that to Luthen's piece, they would have found the listening device, and that would kind of topple the house of cards there that Luthen set up. I almost have a feeling that he already knows that he's being spied on. He has to.
Everybody's been, and I love that. Like Luthen knew about Andor's mission before Andor told him about it. And he's like, I didn't say anything about that.
Yeah.
And he's like, how did you know that? He's like, oh, they contacted me. Word got to me pretty quickly. Everybody's spying on everybody, which is amazing. You think you're working, you're the number 2 guy. You're getting spied on as well, man. Like everybody's getting spied on. But in those scenes, and of course, anytime we get to see Krennic is amazing. I think he does a great job. But we've talked about sound. We've talked about how it looks. Let's talk about costuming as well.
Yeah.
The dress uniforms for the Empire. People are just getting more and more cosplay to be able to do at Star Wars conventions. Those Krennic's dress uniform, I thought, was just remarkable.
Yeah.
And it was good to see that back and forth. It's something somebody mentioned it in the chat. It's great to see the back and forth with Krennic.
Yeah, I think hopefully we'll have more scenes with Mon Mothma. Obviously, next week we get. I'm assuming we get a lot more Mon Mothma in the Imperial Senate. She starts to reveal and show her cards when it comes to resisting the Palpatine's pull and influence. But what do you think of the recast, Bail Organa?
Oh man, I heard people were mad about this. They were up in arms about this too. Like,
yes,
get a life. I thought. Well, number one, it was what 30 seconds on screen,
Yeah.
not even. And we talked about Ben Bratt last week.
Yeah.
I thought he did fine. I think he carries himself much in the same manner that Jimmy Smits does. And I sent you a post that somebody wrote, and I agree with them. Like these, Luke belongs to Mark Hamill. Harrison Ford belongs, or Han Solo belongs to Harrison Ford. But for all these other characters, Jimmy Smits has played them very well. But again, how many Doctor Who's have there been? They just wrote it into it why they have different actors.
Yeah.
They were smart about it. They put a reason in for different actors. I thought he did a fine job in whatever scenes he's in, and the rest of it, I think he'll do a fine job on those as well.
Yeah, and Tony Gurroy said, I put him in this week, just a minute or two scene, just so the fans can get it out of their system. They can talk about it, they can lament, they can complain, and then next arc he's in it for the long run. We get to see him in the Imperial Senate with Mon Mothma. So I think by the time we get to next week, it'll be out of our systems. We've will have accepted it and then just move on, like you said. But
Yeah.
I think Benjamin Bratt will do a great job. Yeah, for sure.
I think his speech patterns and just the way he carries himself is very similar to Jimmy Smith's. I think he'll do a fine job.
Yeah.
That's not the only. Go ahead.
Jimmy Smith's, Cam, not John Louis Gazamo. I know we all look alike.
Same guy. John Leguizamo would have been another story if that would.
Yeah.
We might be having a different conversation then. But the other person people are talking about obviously is Mon Mothma, and the treatment of her, quote unquote, treatment of her throughout this series. Do you think they are taking away from her character, adding to her character? What do you think about the treatment of Mon Mothma?
I think they are, obviously we see Mon Mothma as a character in Return of the Jedi. We see her, throughout the animated shows. I think they're doing a really good job of kind of reverse engineering the character to lead up to what we already know. We know where she comes from. We just never got to see, the process of the character and how how things are falling apart in her world. Obviously, in the first season, we get a glimpse of the finances of Mon Mothma and kind of trying to divert, funds uh, you know, to fund this rebellion. And I know that's not very Star Wars-ish, but I think it's fascinating to kind of see some of that, come about, especially in the second season. We see a lot of it, just starting to fall apart. She's trying to maintain control in one aspect of her life. She's going to try to do it in the Senate, but I think from a personal perspective, as we saw her getting drunk and dancing at the wedding, things are falling apart for her. And I think that's when characters really get interesting, when they are on their last leg, their final leg of the rope here. I think this is where motivations really get interesting.
Yeah. And we kind of talked about it last week with Return of the Jedi and what we saw there, even though she was only on screen for a very short time. Now, I don't know if this is a function of the actress that played her or if it was the writing of episode 6, but the character I saw in episode 6 was very cold, very detached, and didn't look like she had much gas left in the tank at all at that point. She just wanted this whole thing to end. And I think all this is leading up to that point. I think it's going to get very, very bad for Mon and her family.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I said it to you in a chat. It's definitely going to get really bad for her and her family. I think she's going to have to make a choice, and it's going to be a very difficult choice. She's going to have to, choose between the galaxy or husband and daughter, and it's not faring well for her.
Yeah. Just Spada says there, so much depth to her motivations and the fact that she has to wear so many masks to try to do the right thing. I agree, and that's obviously very tiresome to have to do that.
Sure.
And you can see her, whether it's on screen or in the book, she is literally putting on faces. And in one event, she might put on, 3 or 4 different faces, depending on who she's talking to. That will definitely wear on you.
Absolutely. We get towards the end. 2 scenes before the end, though, the scene where the rebels kind of steal what they were going to steal and they're getting away. The one guy, I guess, that was the nervous Nelly in the rebellion that kind of messed things up for Val and Cinta.
That dude.
Yeah, man. That was a really great scene with Val when she was basically, talking about
you don't
Cinta.
follow. They had mission parameters.
Sure. Yeah.
And this is what happens when you don't follow those. She said only the 2 of them will have blasters. He wasn't even supposed to have a blaster on him.
Right.
So this is what happens.
And it's interesting too, from an aesthetic situation. Vel is talking to him about Cinta and how she was a miracle and how great of a person and a warrior she was. There was one time where the camera is on Val. Cinta was a miracle, and then the light like shined right behind her, engulfing her in this bright light. It was beautiful to see because I think a lot of people kind of picked up and attached, obviously, emotion to that, saying that that was kind of Cinta's last goodbye to Vel before she went away for good. But it's interesting how um, there's many interpretations of how these shows are shot, dialogue, scenery, obviously characters, but I really digging everyone's take from that perspective, just seeing how many different things people interpret in the cinema, I guess, of Andor.
Yeah, and I love when she went in A League of Their Own. Tom Hanks on that guy. Are you crying?
Yeah.
Are you crying?
Yeah.
And there's no crying in Star Wars. And carry this with you're gonna carry her with you for the rest of your life, and basically called the guy a piece of shit and said, yeah, you're gonna do something with your life, because you you just killed an amazing person. And I
Right.
thought that was so for those.
Powerful.
I mean, for those calling it pretentious and stuff like that, that was a powerful scene in my
Sure.
opinion. Like, and I think the actress, I'm not familiar with her name, but the actress, she did an amazing job there. Like,
Yeah.
you have the audacity to be crying right now. Like,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was a powerful scene.
Yeah, I think obviously the visuals are great. The acting is amazing. Pretty top notch all the way through. Um, and obviously getting towards the end of this arc, we've got that festive scene. They arrange to remove that listening device, and everyone is happy. We get one last scene where Bix and Cassian go on one last mission there. And why don't you tell us a little bit about that? That's pretty cool, huh?
I mean, it was the hero
Poetic.
walk, man. It
Yeah.
was the walk away.
Yeah.
If it was just in slow motion, it would have been perfect. Um, so what does that mean for the two of them now is the question. Because I guess a lot of the debate was, hey, is Bix ready to go on all these different missions?
Yeah.
Is she mission ready to go with Andor? And do you think that was that a sanctioned job that they were doing there,
Probably,
or do you
probably
think?
not.
Okay,
That was Cassian taking care of Bix, and I think we see that
that's what I thought too.
that Andor, his role is really to support her in the struggle.
Yeah,
And again, Luthen went to go visit her when Cassian was on this mission. That was a little bit on the inappropriate side, according to Cassian. Cassian didn't want Luthen, interfering there. But it's Cassian taking care of her. And I think this mission kind of represents that. She wants revenge. Maybe she'll be able to sleep at night, take care of Dr. Gortz, and then walk away, scot free. That satisfaction of revenge is something that Bix, I think, needed. And maybe now we won't see her so dependent on the substance. But there is, an adage when someone who is codependent, they'll latch onto something, whether it's a drug or a person. I feel like Bix might just be substituting one vice for another.
yeah. So I think we might get some parallel streams here. On the one side, I think we're going to see that. In my opinion, I think Luthen is going to start to see Bix as a liability, and
Yes.
I think that that's going to cause some big drama between Luthen and Andor. And on the flip side of that, we have the arc with Dedra and with Cyril,
Hmm.
and I think Dedra is going to have to face some decision points, whether because she's been all mission so far, but I think she's actually going to have feelings for Cyril, whether she likes it or not.
Mhm.
And I think she's going to have to make some decisions on that front as well.
I think you're right. And it's interesting too because it harkens back to this is a minor point, but in the final season of Resistance, that animated show that nobody watched, there did come a time when one of the character regulars had to make a decision to join the First Order, and I think from that standpoint, I think a lot of the characters here will be faced with that decision, and I think the first season set up actually the first arc set up um the fact that these characters are going through so much that at some point they're going to have to make a decision, and one of the questions that they have to ask themselves is when is enough enough? When will I have to take that step towards a better future? um and I think that's the crux of this series. Obviously, we know what happens at the end. We get into Star Wars Empire, Return of the Jedi, and the fall of the Empire. But I think all of this deals with how do we do it in a way that's honorable to the cause. Because somebody in the chat, obviously, we're talking about gray area in the morality of the rebellion versus the morality of the Empire. But I think all of this leads up to Mon Mothma wanting to take care of this the right way, the honorable way, and then obviously we get not to sound hyperbolic here, but we get the notion of someone like Luke Skywalker, taking up the mantle of trying to establish peace in the galaxy through the story that obviously we all know. But it's interesting. I find that setup um, fascinating, especially in this story.
Yeah, if I had to sum up this series and Gilroy, and I think what he's trying to convey, if I had to use one word for this whole thing, I think it would be sacrifice.
Yeah,
And there comes a question with each character: what are you willing to sacrifice for your beliefs? And everybody's going to have to face that. You can see every character, and like you said, this is to your point from the first arc, and you said how it sets it up. You can see for each character, they all have a list of things that they would need to sacrifice for their beliefs. Is Cassian willing to sacrifice Bix? Is Luthen willing to sacrifice Andor? Is Mon willing to sacrifice Perrin and her daughter? Is
right.
Dedra willing to sacrifice Cyril? Everybody. What are they willing to sacrifice for their beliefs? And I think that's what makes it such a great. Uh, it's a powerful story on a big level, and it's a powerful story on a personal level, and that's why I completely disagree with the pretentious, quote that you had from earlier.
Absolutely. You're so pseudo intellectual.
Pseudo. I mean, I don't know. I sent you a video from Sam Witwer earlier, and I think I'm for the 5 people that I'm friends with on Instagram. I think I shared it on there, but Sam Witwer says, "Oh, everybody thinks they understand Star Wars," and he said, and they're right to an extent. We all understand Star Wars, and it means something different to each one of us.
Sure.
Literally, we all see this movie, the movies and the shows differently, depending on our own histories, upbringings, all these things. We all see it differently. We all understand it differently. So I think it's pretty. I mean, I'm going to go ahead and say insulting to call it pseudo intellectual when obviously we've been talking. We could easily talk for another. We've been talking for an hour and a half. We could easily talk for another hour and a half on these shows, and I wouldn't call this a pseudo intellectual discussion. So just because it doesn't resonate with you doesn't make it pretentious or pseudo intellectual.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and I think again, I think people are misinterpreting the nuance of this type of writing in a supposed children's genre of entertainment.
It's
We
been
we
no
are
your mama jokes, so maybe that's what's missing from this.
that's
Is a
probably what's
maybe
missing.
it'll be
Yeah,
deeper if there's a your mama joke at the beginning of it.
absolutely. We'll see if that happens in next week. But let's go through our I guess our last week you said that you kind of judged this show on a different scale.
Sure.
But let's get back to that. How many stars out of 5 would you give this particular arc?
I was
Based
going at a 10. Mine's on a 10 scale. I was going
Okay.
to go 6, 8, 7 for the 3. I think episode 4 was a 6, episode 5 was an 8, and episode 6 was a 7 for a 7 overall, which is better than what I had for the first arc, which is
Sure.
somewhere around a 5 or a 6. I think I put it.
Yeah, I give it 7, 9, 8.
Okay.
The second episode for me was really, really fantastic. I had to, there's certain scenes that I had to watch again. Obviously, Saw Gerrera's execution of that supposed spy
Yeah.
was surprising. But again, just the more revelation of Saw Gerrera in that second episode was fantastic. I think he's a favorite character of mine. But I think overall this arc, and I can't remember what I gave. I think I gave a 7 last week.
Yeah.
I'm going to do 8.5 on this week's arc. I did like it a lot more than the first week. But the second week is there's so much there, between the Gormans, between the relationship between Bix and Cassian. I think Luthen, and even Luthen and Clea. I think everyone is, all these story arcs within this main story arc are fascinating. Everyone involved is bringing their A game.
Yeah, for sure.
This is really, really a great second week to this arc. We are halfway through the Andor second season, and can't wait to watch the next arc, where hopefully we'll get I'll be on the side of some of the other fans. Hope we get a little more action. We are separated by a year between these arcs, and we'll see how we progress in that year, where our characters are, and I'm looking forward to it.
So it'll be 1 year before, and then basically right before Rogue One.
Yeah.
That's the Bantha Poodoo's about to hit the fan. That's
Absolutely. It's going to be fantastic. Folks in the chat, thank you again for joining us on this Saturday edition of the Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast, ScarifLive. We have a pinned post up at the top of the chat. Nicole was telling me that it's not the coffee one, but it's the t-shirt. Our TeePublic store is on sale. We got a couple of new designs up there for a good price. Make sure you use the link, and you'll be able to save. If you wanted to save an extra 15%, I think all you have to do is put in your email and sign on, and you'll be able to save some moolah there. So thank you, everyone, for joining us on this episode. Don't miss tomorrow at 7 o'clock right here on ScarifLive and the Red 5 Network. I spoke with Sierra Dahl, who is the former partner of Colin Cantwell. Colin Cantwell, obviously, he designed ships like the X-Wing, the TIE Fighter, the Death Star, was in George Lucas's ear when it came to designing some of the ships that we all love. And he has been touted as ILM's first employee, even before Ralph McQuarrie. So we had a discussion with Sierra, and have some kind of exclusive photos and video clips that she took before Colin passed away, explaining some of the thought process behind the design. So check that out here on the YouTubes. And then Brad and I are busy prepping some more audio shows for the month of May. Oh, we're having Steve Sansweet's coming back to the Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast.
It's always great to talk to him. Always great. He's got some good projects. Obviously, he's been very instrumental part of the Star Wars fandom. What he's done with Rancho Obi-Wan and the Star Wars Encyclopedia and everything he's ever done. Huge part of the Star Wars universe. It's always great to talk to him.
Excellent. And thank you, Sean, for showing up at the end here. We TiVo'd the rest of it. So if you wanted to rewind and be kind, thank you so much.
I got to watch one of these videos that I'm seeing on YouTube from Screen Crush. Andor episodes 5 through 6, 143 Easter eggs. I'll have to watch 143 Easter eggs.
And I bet we only know 82 of them.
Yes. It's 54 minutes. I think I can waste that much time watching that video.
Excellent. All right, Brad, and everyone in the chat who hung out till the end and throughout the discussion, thank you so much for joining us here on the Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast. If you have anything else to add, we would love to hear your voice. Hit us up on the Scarif Scuttlebutt hotline, which is 773-234-8659, or send us a little voice note in our inbox. That is scarifscuttlebutt@gmail.com.
Yeah, we're going to do a Tatooine hot take soon because there's some really bad opinions out there that I can't wait to talk about.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We are part of the Red 5 Network. For the rest of the shenanigans over at the Red 5 Network, head on over to bio.link/Red5. Until next time, that's Brad. I am Ro. You guys are fantastic. May the Force be with you. Happy May the 4th tomorrow. But right now, may the Force be with you. Thank you, guys. Talk to you guys later.